in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rebelpreneur Radio, the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I'm Ralph Brogden. And you know, we live in the information age, but as we've been saying in previous episodes, if you want to succeed in your life and in your business, you've got to go beyond information and experience transformation. Today's guest will help you get there. Her name is Eileen Anumani Santos. She is an award-winning and international best-selling author of Unmasking Your Soul, a Transformational Journey of Truth, Light, and Healing. She's also a contributing author to the anthology Pebbles in the Pond, Wave 4. While Anumani spent the first half of her life in the corporate world, all of that changed in 2003 when she had a mystical dream that awakened her to a deeper calling. As a modern-day shaman and coach, she now works with transformational leaders, messengers, and healers to help them understand their reason for being and bring their gifts and soul's genius into the world. So, Anumani, it's such a pleasure to have you on Rebelpreneur Radio. Welcome.
Thank you, Ralph. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you are really into some interesting things, and I've only just begun to scratch the surface. Tell our listeners a little bit more about what you do and who you help.
Absolutely. So I help mostly women, but I help anybody who is feeling that calling to go within and discover more of who they really are. It usually shows up in different ways. For me, it showed up as a dream when I was going through a difficult period in my life. So usually the folks that I work with are feeling something similar. Something difficult is happening in their life. It could be a job loss. It could be a relationship that's failing. And it's like they know there's something more they're supposed to be doing, but they're stuck in fear and they don't know how to get out of that. And that's when, they might reach out to me to help them figure out and give them the tools where they can discover more about who they are and really create the life that they want, be it in a career that's really fulfilling, a deeper purpose in life, but really creating a life that is more joyful and that's more in alignment with their soul's purpose. And that's really what I'm here to do is, I spent most of my life in corporate, but in 2003, I had this mystical dream that you mentioned. And it's like now I'm marrying the best of two worlds. If you can think of the brain as the left side is the part of you that's kind of that more logical doing. And then the right side is that creative, innovative, and it's where the spirit connection lies. I now get to marry both of those with my clients because I've experienced the business world, but I've also experienced that more expansive spiritual world, which for some might come into their lives as a form of intuition. And I think most people have heard the word intuition, right? When you get that gut feeling, you might know that something's good for you or not good for you. So I help people now kind of marry both of those parts of themselves so that they can show up in the world more authentically.
Wow, that's really important. And I think that really taps into an issue that a lot of people struggle with. And they tend to be very either or in their thinking, and they get really logical and rational about their business, but they don't find the joy or the happiness in their business, probably because they're not tapping into that creative and spiritual side of who they are. So you help people to do that and to bring those two together. But how did you get started doing this? Tell us the story of how you learned to do this for yourself and then to be able to do it for others.
Absolutely. So up until 2003, I started my career as an electrical engineer, and then I got my MBA and went into management consulting for many years and ended up as a corporate executive in a small nonprofit. And that same year when I started in the nonprofit, which was 2003, I had this mystical dream. And in the dream at the end was really the most impactful part of the dream. There was this voice that said to me, "My child, I have a mission for you. You're not going to understand what it is, but be patient because in time it will all be revealed." And for me, it was God's voice. For others, it may be, higher power, universe, whatever it is that you feel comfortable with. But it's the part of us that's more expansive than this human body. And I didn't know what that mission was. Actually, it probably took a year until I started to understand more of what that was. But it certainly gave me this courage to leave an unhealthy marriage that I was in, which is one of the symptoms that I think we start to feel in our lives when our soul is trying to get our attention to say, hey, there's something more you're supposed to be doing, and we're not paying attention and awareness, and that's where the intuition comes in. And I wasn't paying attention. My body started to break down. I was starting to get sick. I was feeling depressed, exhausted because I was working many, many hours. And I started to get fainting spells, and the doctors couldn't find anything. But that dream kind of jolted me into a different place, and it's what I needed. And the first thing I did was leave the unhealthy marriage that I was in. And knowing what I know now, action begets more action. And so once I took that action, it's like the universe piped in and started to send me people that could help me and opportunities. And I was sitting in a meditation class about a year later, and this woman who I did not know comes up to me at the end of the class and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" And at the time I said, "Well, I'm running a marketing department at this, nonprofit." And she said, "Do you know you're supposed to be a healer?" And I kind of looked at her because I always loved helping people, but I didn't know exactly what that meant for me. But I knew that I needed to surrender to that. And I started to meet other people, and eventually I started to connect more with the spiritual realm and began to understand that I was here to work as a healer. And there's many different types of, holistic healers out there. I'm an energy healer. Some of you may have heard the terms like Reiki. It's becoming much more accepted. You may go get a massage, and one of the opportunities is to actually get some Reiki healing, where people use their hands and they're kind of have their hands above you, and they're sending you energy because we are energy. And so part of what I do is now I do that, but I do it through my voice. And I actually, lots of things that I was so afraid of, like public speaking and using my voice, is now my greatest gift. And that's one of the things that I discovered, that usually our greatest gifts are in the places where we have our greatest fears. And so now I use my voice, and when I'm working on people, I may be singing, and I'm doing a lot of public speaking, because I know that I'm here to do for others what I was able to learn through the people that came into my life and through my own connection with my soul, to help them find their purpose the way I was able to find mine. And really know that when your soul self and your human self are aligned, you are your happiest self. And so the more we can peel back the onion, because it's kind of like that, there's layers of stuff, experiences that we've had, traumas that we've had, things that were said to us, especially when we were children, and peeling back those layers so that we can release those limiting beliefs about who we really are and be confident enough to allow that to express through us and show up in the world more authentically. And it doesn't matter what your purpose is, if it's to be a housewife or, be an entrepreneur or a leader. I love the term that they use in Okinawa in Japan. They call it ikigai, which is your reason for being. That's what I'm helping people do, is understand their reason for being, because when you live in that way, your life just completely transforms and you are happier and more joyful. And then you can show up for others in that way as well.
Very, very powerful. Now, you are the author of the book, Unmasking Your Soul, a Transformational Journey of Truth, Light, and Healing. And so you work with people to help them make these journeys and to discover their real purpose using your voice and your unique gifts. What would you say is the biggest problem that people you help are experiencing? What's the big obstacle that keeps coming up over and over again?
Well, it's always rooted in some sort of fear. It shows up in different ways. They may have a sense that there's something more they're supposed to do. They may have a sense that they have a deeper purpose. They're not sure what it is or how to get there. Stemmed in some sort of fear, feeling stuck. Very common when I do the surveys that I do to launch the coaching programs. That is always one of the obstacles that people put down. I feel stuck. I feel stuck. I don't know how to move forward. And there's always something difficult happening in their life. It could be a relationship. It could be not feeling fulfilled in their jobs, right? And I was good at what I did, but there was always this part of me that knew that I was supposed to be doing something else, but I was scared. And so a lot of the people I attract have similar experiences that they've had where they're not feeling fulfilled in their relationships, in their careers, as a person, right? And then something painful is happening. And so, it tends to happen between kind of 40 and 50 years old. And it's like their soul is calling them forward saying, hey, it's time for you to step in and do what you're here to do. And I'm finding that people are starting to feel some of this even at a younger age. And more recently, clients showing up who, are 28, 30 years old. And I believe it's because there's a lot of transformation that needs to happen in this world. We're seeing it with all the events that are happening around the world. And we are needed to step into who we really are so that together we can shift what's happening. And the only way we can shift that is by being more of ourselves.
That's interesting. And I want to go back to something you said a little bit earlier. You mentioned that you have found that our greatest fear is where our gifting is. And that sounds counterintuitive, but explain how and why that is.
Yeah, it's our greatest fear always is the place where we're going to get stuck, right? And it's the place that when we try to move forward, it may be hard to do by ourselves, right? And I experienced that. I remember in a lot of the corporate environments, I had to do public speaking. And people would come up to me afterwards and I'm talking about, business talks and talking about marketing and sales and whatever it was, the consulting work that I was doing or in the corporate job that I had. And people would come up to me and say, oh my God, like your voice is so calming. Yet, underneath, I was always so nervous. And part of it was that I had these limiting beliefs about myself. I didn't feel worthy. I was insecure about myself. That's where the mask comes in, right? My book is called Unmasking Your Soul. And I wore many masks. And I think all of us will tend to wear masks in the places where we feel insecure about ourselves. Many times it's not conscious, it's in our subconscious. And we may not be aware that it's even there, but 95% of our behavior is driven by our subconscious. That's where our greatest fears are. And it's always going to be in those places where we're here to teach people, because you can't teach something that you haven't experienced yourself. And so I know that I had to go through all that fear, and not that I've released all my fears, because there's kind of different levels as we grow and expand. But I needed to begin to let go of those beliefs that were stopping me. And one of them was I hated to listen to my voice. Like I would listen to a recording of myself and go, oh my God, why are these people telling me that my voice is so calming, right? It was like there was a part of me that had a hard time believing that. And it's because I had some limiting beliefs from when I was a kid about really believing in myself. There were times when I was told like, oh, you'll never be able to do that. I remember when I had this dream and I started on this journey, I had people telling me, you're never going to be able to make money doing that. And so, those fears are always going to be in places where we need to expand and grow, because that's really what we're here to teach others. Interesting.
So if fear is the biggest thing, and that is our subconscious accounts for 95% of our actions, and most of those actions or inactions are driven by fear, what can someone begin to do right now to begin to get past that fear and at least make a first step towards getting unstuck? What do they need to do, and how can they help themselves in that process?
Sure. One of the first things is to start to ask yourself some questions, right? Because if you ask yourself, am I happy with my life and I'm happy where I'm going, then you're in a really good place and you don't need to go further. But for most of us, there's some inner work that needs to happen, because your inner world is a reflection of your outer world. So there's a couple of questions that I always tell people to begin to ask themselves to start this process. The one is like, who am I? And many people have probably heard this, before. But you start there, like, who am I? And what does that really mean for me? And what am I here to do? Like, what's my purpose? In some other traditions, they call it dharma, right? In Japan, they call it ikigai. What is it that you're really here to do? And are you doing that? And if you're not doing that, why not? Where are the places in your life where you're not being authentic and you may be wearing masks? Because those are going to be the clues of what's underneath all that. And, we're talking to entrepreneurs and leaders on this show. And so, I tell people to ask themselves, where are you not being authentic as a leader? And I love this quote by Warren Bennis. He says, becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. It is precisely that simple, and it is also that difficult. Because how you lead yourself impacts how you show up in the world for yourself and for others. So especially for folks who, are leading teams and companies, right? This is so important. This is not just for your personal life, because the more you are you, the better leader you're going to be. So beginning to ask yourself some of these questions will begin the process of awareness, because awareness is really where it all begins, where, I tell people, you need to take the initiative to start making the changes in your life. It's not going to happen by itself. And it is an inner journey. So starting to ask yourself these questions begins to open the doorway for whatever else needs to happen to either get you the help that you need, right? To meet the people that can give you the advice, and we all have blind spots. So I have coaches that I work with to help me show up more authentically and more as myself so that I can serve in the highest good that I can. So these questions will open the doorway for that.
I think that's really important. And it really leads into the next question, because you said earlier that it's in a lot of cases, this is not something that you can fix yourself. You do need that outside assistance to help guide you along the path, and to get this transformation going, to help you to ask the right questions. So how would it be beneficial to someone, for example, to work with you, and what would you do with them that would really improve their chances for success?
Sure. Yes, working with a professional who's walked your shoes before you is always the best way to get big transformation in your life. For me, it began, I've been working on myself since I had that dream, but my life really catalyzed in 2014 when I met my book mentor, Christine Closer. It's when I knew that I needed to start writing a book, but I knew I couldn't do it on my own. And having her actually helped me open up to a deeper part of myself. And that's what I help, people, is to help bring in tools. And my process is in my book. There's 3 stages that we go through, but I bring together the elements of mind, body, and spirit. So I'm helping you do the inner work, which some would say is more of the spiritual work. But I'm also giving my clients practical tools, because you need to bring in the mindset. I talked about the subconscious. And so I do help to remove what's in the way through the energy healing. And part of that is removing some of the limiting beliefs in the subconscious. But you have to do some of the heavy lifting as well, and creating, routines in your life that help you create the right mindset. So we get into things like, inner critics. We all have all those voices in our heads that try to hold us back from stepping into more of who we are. And really because, the ego's job is to keep us safe. But in trying to keep us safe, it holds us back from expanding and growing. And so we need tools to be able to deal with those voices in the right way and not allow them to run our lives. So we get into mindset. We get into how do you use your body to support you on this journey. And depending on what your goals are, I get into leadership development, if that's, one of your goals. We go into some of the core foundational things, which I have found there are 3 areas, and these are part of the areas that I talk about in the first stage in my book, but self-love, self-worthiness, and self-power. They are always at the foundation of why most people may not be able to show up as authentically as they would like to in the world. So that's part of what we work on, in the coaching program. So we're doing both the energetics plus some real practical tools that people can use in their daily life. If you're working in a corporate environment, I'm helping you understand how do I bring that part of me right into the corporate world. And a lot of people feel like there's no space for spirituality in corporate. Well, yes, there is. You don't have to overtly be speaking about it, but you can actually be using it for yourself to make a better environment for you. Things like, meditating before you go to work, or even using just your breath when you're in an environment and maybe there's some tension happening. And with a breath, you're able to recenter yourself so that you can be your best at work and not allow the noise of the outside world to affect you, which is so easy for many of us. I mean, I lived that life for many years and I wasn't using that part of me. And boy, did my life change once I started integrating that into my daily life.
Mm. Well, it sounds like something that is really, really needed, and I think it would definitely transform corporate America if we were able to tap into these very powerful principles that you're sharing with us right now. You are a busy person with clients and with all kinds of things going on, but I wonder if you have anything in particular that you're working on right now that you are especially excited about that you'd like to share with us.
Absolutely. Yes. I have a lot of great ideas that I'd like to bring forward in 2018. In fact, this week I'm launching a new women's circle, and it's called Igniting the Power of Your Soul. And I'm doing much more conversations on Facebook Live. So if people go to my Facebook page, they'll be able to hear me interviewing others around how they're unmasking their soul. I'm planning to bring on some online programs and doing some retreats this year and a lot more speaking engagements. And also, I started working with children last year through a client that I met who helps children really create the core foundation of encouraging them to be more of themselves at an earlier age. And that's very exciting for me because I love working with kids. And so I think there's going to be more of that for me in the future where I'm actually working with families and with children and helping them early on to be more of themselves, right? So that by the time they become an adult, they're living more of their purpose. Right. Not like myself that I spent, half of my life in corporate. And I believe everything happens for a reason. I was meant to live that. But I'm really encouraged and loving this opportunity to work with children and young adults at an earlier age so that they can maximize their gifts earlier on.
Wow. That's really, really powerful stuff that you've got there. And it would make a difference, I think. The earlier you can set someone on the correct path towards their purpose, the less time they waste trying to figure that out. So that's very important. How can our listeners get in touch with you if they want to find out more about your different products and services?
Yes, they can come to my website, which is www.anumanispeaks.com. And on that site, they'll see more about my book, and they'll also get to see my speaking page of the different speaking topics that I have and different media opportunities that I've had to get to learn more about me. And they can contact me on that page and send me an email as well.
Excellent. Well, this has been really inspirational and encouraging to have you share and to tap into your brain a little bit and get some of your wisdom. I'm wondering if you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners as we close.
I do. One, really just to practice being yourself. It actually takes more effort to not be yourself and certainly creates more chaos in our lives, and start doing the inner work. And I actually want to leave your audience with a quote. So Marianne Williamson is one of my favorite authors. And when I started my journey back in 2003, I read her book, Returning to Love. And in there, there's this really powerful quote, which really reminds me of when you really are more of yourself, you step into that place of power and self-confidence. And she says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. It's not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own lights shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are all liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Perfect. Words of wisdom from Eileen Anumani Santos. She is an award-winning and international best-selling author of Unmasking Your Soul, a transformational journey of truth, light, and healing. You can find out more about her at anumanispeaks.com. Thank you so much for being on Rebelpreneur Radio today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ralph. It was such a pleasure to be with you.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at ralphbrogden.com.